If romanticization is the process of making something more appealing or thinking in a more idealistic way, then de-romanticization would be the opposite, or presenting something or thinking about something or someone in a more realistic or even mundane way. I recently highlighted the romanticization of the male and female manipulators in Baby Girl. In that movie, the male manipulator is a young, intelligent man who uses his charm and wit to target the female manipulator. In turn, the much older female manipulator plays into a power dynamic that sees her being submissive to her new manipulative intern. My major problem with the film is that the scenario is so overly romanticized to the point where the characters do very morally reprehensible things and practically face no consequences. The female manipulator in this film is a super successful CEO with a family, and despite breaking company policy and coming super close to ruining her marriage, not only does her husband stay after countless lies and deceptive behaviors, she also gets to keep her job, despite her assistant finding out about the whole affair. Not to mention the fact that the assistant was literally dating the intern who her boss was having an affair with. I mainly chalk it up as the director wanting to push some meta-narrative of female solidarity. But as a man myself, I find it hard to enjoy this kind of escapism that doesn't actually appeal to me or my beliefs of being with romantic partners that I can trust and who won't take advantage of me. But that's exactly what romanticizing often does. It allows us to escape into a far more idealistic fantasy where things appear much better than they really are. That's where de-romanticization comes in and presents the audience with more realistic depictions of scenarios that can teach us many things about human nature or allow us to reflect on our own lives. Although the beginning of the film Anora is quite exciting and romanticized, we are quickly pulled into the realistic consequences of our main character's scenario. Vanya is the son of a rich Russian oligarch who meets Anora in the strip club she works at. Vanya manipulates Anora by offering her large sums of money to perform sexual acts for him. The two spend lots of time together after meeting, and a pattern of behavior very similar to love bombing. Vanya invites her to his New Year's party, takes her clubbing with his friends, pays her to be his personal girlfriend for the week, all while Anora seemingly develops genuine feelings for him. Vanya insists that he and Anora would be a good match even if he weren't wealthy, though in reality he doesn't have genuine feelings for her. Despite all this, Vanya proposes the idea of getting married, and Anora is incapable of saying no to his offer. Naturally, the two aren't as compatible as they had hoped, though it becomes immediately apparent that Vanya never foresaw their relationship lasting very long. Vanya spends his time getting high, playing video games, and only connects with Anora through sexual acts. When his bodyguards inform his parents of the marriage, they are ashamed and immediately plan to take their son back to Russia for good. Unable to face the consequences of his actions, Vanya runs away, leaving his bodyguards and Anora to set out on a wild goose chase in search of the runaway prince. Obviously, this upsets Anora, but she is still naive enough to believe that Vanya actually has feelings for her. When the two finally meet up with Vanya's parents, the act is completely gone, and he admits that their relationship was never meant to be, suggesting it was just a little fun before having to take over his father's business. Anora is a 23-year-old stripper, 2 years older than Vanya, who works in New York, living in poverty with her younger sister. As a stripper, Anora is very skilled in the manipulative art of charm and seduction, and is one of the more popular girls at the club. When she realizes that her latest customer is a young man with a lot of cash to throw around, she goes against the club's policy and gives Vanya an extra special dance. Although Anora isn't nearly as bad as Vanya in the film, she consistently shows signs that she also isn't a great person. Anora seems to lack emotional intelligence and confuses her adoration of Vanya's wealth and status as genuine feelings of love for him. This becomes painfully obvious when the two of them never actually develop any significant emotional connection and can only truly enjoy each other when using drugs or having sex. After Vanya runs from his bodyguards, Anora is left in their care until they can find him and get their marriage annulled. Anora is consistently labeled as a prostitute, which she doesn't agree with, and even goes as far as to try and present herself as more respectable than she really is. If Vanya's parents weren't the powerful and calculating oligarchs that they are, maybe this level of manipulation could have worked. But unfortunately, no one in the film is quite as gullible as she is. After Vanya's bodyguards arrive, we are introduced to Igor, one of the most surprising supporting characters in the entire film. Anora has a hard time trusting Igor, as he was asked to restrain Anora by his boss. He chooses to tie Anora up and at some point restrains her on his lap. Moving past that interaction, Anora refuses to trust Igor and ridicules him throughout the film, despite him insisting that he was acting in a way so that she wouldn't hurt herself or others. Although Igor is the most compassionate towards Anora throughout the entire movie, he is consistently the victim of her ridicule. Yet we also see her slowly start to recognize this and become more trusting of Igor. He even goes as far as to suggest that Vanya should apologize to Anora for his actions in front of Vanya's mother and father. However, we see that Anora still views him as a bad person. She is unable to see the good in him and claims that he would have raped her if he had the chance. When Igor asks why this is, she doesn't give an answer based on the behaviors he displayed throughout the film and simply states that he has rape eyes, reducing his entire character to an arbitrary and subjective opinion about his appearance. Before Anora leaves for good to go back to her home with her sister, Igor gives her one last parting gift, the engagement ring that was initially taken from her when she was tied up earlier in the film. And it's here where Anora finally sees him for who he actually is. The final scene of Anora is a very powerful one, but apparently for some it may be harder to interpret. After giving Anora back the ring, Igor waits for Anora to walk to the door of her home, where he has just placed all her bags. But Anora is visibly stunned. She can't believe that Igor might not actually be the bad guy she thought he was. Unfortunately for Igor, Anora is still the problematic character she was from the beginning of the film, and initiates sex with him without his explicit consent. As the two continue to play out this scenario in Igor's car, Igor attempts to kiss Anora, which snaps her back to reality as she begins to resist his affection by hitting him. She begins to break down, finally submitting to crying in his embrace. At this moment, Anora seems to be becoming aware of her patterns of behavior and how she uses sex as a way to connect with others without forming deeper emotional bonds. When presented with the more intimate act of kissing, she loses a sense of composure and realizes that her connection with Igor is completely different from any of the shallow relationships she has used for monetary gain, whether through her work as a stripper or her role as Vanya's personal girlfriend. Because Because she's finally making a genuine emotional connection, the reality of her situation with Vanya suddenly crashes down upon her. She begins breaking down in tears while on top of Igor. I don't love this ending because it's sad. I love it because rather than continuing to be the naive girl she was throughout the movie, Anora seems to be discovering things about herself and others for the first time. In this moment, she realizes that a lifestyle of meaningless sex is not a path to deep emotional connection. Naturally, there are probably many interpretations of this final scene, but I left the film with the understanding that Anora realized she was incompatible with Vanya. But more importantly, she also seems to realize that she isn't well adjusted enough yet to be with someone who values emotional intimacy like Igor. In a world full of manipulative people, it doesn't feel right that a good person should be paired with someone who isn't nearly as emotionally mature as they are. Incompatibilities exist to remind us either that there is someone better suited for us, or that we still have lessons to learn and room to grow.